Hello everyone, my name is Julie Demi. I am an e-learning designer and a Delta holder. In these sessions, I share with you how to do well in Delta Module 1, 2 and 3. Today we are going to talk about Delta Module 1, Paper 2, Task 2, and I hope that this video will be helpful. So make sure you have something to write on and a pen, and off we go. Let's get started. Alright, so today we are going to talk about Delta Module 1 Prep and Paper 2, Task 2. Many of my colleagues told me that it was one of the most challenging tasks, and in general Paper 2 is not a very easy one, so I would say that it requires our thorough attention and prep. Today I will share with you what it consists of. We will talk about marking, and I will also show you the example answer and how you can approach it in a good way. So these are the things that we have in our agenda for this session. First of all, we need to understand what it is. For this task, candidates are provided with an extract from published CELTA coursebook material, and the language learning purpose of the extract is specified in the rubric, which means you need to read it carefully. What does it check? In fact, it checks several abilities, and it checks the ability to identify the language learning and/or skills development purpose of ELT materials, how different parts of materials combine and support each other, and the principles informing the design of it. It checks the ability to analyze and evaluate materials for use by language learners. It also checks your ability to identify how specified ELT approaches, methodologies and techniques might help learners to develop language and language skills. It also checks the ability to identify, describe and evaluate different approaches, methodologies and techniques. So these are the things that we need to keep in mind when we prepare. And what to expect? In fact, this task consists of 3 parts: A, B and C. In part A of the task, you are asked to identify the main purpose of the specified individual exercise in the material in relation to the purpose of the extract as a whole. And that's something what you'll see in the rubric. Marks are only awarded for identifying a purpose for each exercise, activity or stage that relates specifically to the stated purpose of the extract as a whole. We can see here an example. A reading exercise may have the main purpose of contextualizing lexics rather than developing reading skills that we can easily come up with when we see any reading assignment. And in this case, it's really important to view this task in the relation to the purpose of the extract as a whole. And it may happen, and most likely the purpose will be different. In part B, you're asked to identify and comment on how specified exercises, activities and stages in the remainder of the material combine with those discussed in part A. So in other words, you will have 4 or 6 activities, and you will see how they are connected with those activities from part A. In part C, you have to identify 6 key assumptions about language learning and skills development that are evident in the exercise discussed in part A and B, and explain why the authors of the material might consider these assumptions to be really important for learning and development. And now let's have a look at the example task that I prepared for you. So here we go. We have the booklet, and we can see here the rubrics. We can see that the task is divided into 3 parts: A, B and C. And everything is stated clearly. We can see the marks that we obtain, and you can see that for part C, you get or you have a chance to get 18 marks if you do it well. And you can see here the purpose of the task. This is something what is stated clearly in the rubric. The purpose of the extract as a whole is to train learners to use dictionaries and to focus on different aspects of what it is to know a word. That's something what we should keep in mind while doing activity A, and for the sake of comfort I decided to make it a little bit bigger, and I decided to cut the exact part that we'll need. So let's have a look at the material that we are provided with. Here we go, we have the dictionary section over here with some common view that we can see in any paper dictionary, and the definitions. So we can see the definitions here as well, some section. Then we have section A, B, C and D, and we'll see how we can work with them. So coming back to task that we have, we will start with part A, and in this part we can see the purpose. The purpose of the extract as a whole is to train learners to use dictionaries and focus on different aspects of what it is to know a word. We need to come up with 6 purposes of the exercise, and we can see here there are 6 exercises listed in the box. So we can see the reference to A1, A2, A3, B4, B5 and B6. And we need to see how these exercises relate to the purpose of the extract as a whole. And what I would ask you to do, as you can see, it would be a really great idea to use a different color and highlight or mark the tasks that you will work with. It's something what helped me personally. So when you, let's say, have on one paper 10 tasks and you need to refer to 6 or 4 tasks and talk about these exercises, it's way easier when you can see them highlighted with a different color, and that's something what you can benefit from. Preferably for each particular part A, part B and part C that you will have in this task, it's better to have a separate highlighter with some particular bright color, maybe pink or yellow, whatever you feel like. If you see that you forgot your highlighter, don't be sad, you can just use some marking system with your pen, circling, highlighting, ticking something. That's definitely some oldie but goodie, and you can use it as well. So let's have a look. We have some exercises here. If we keep in mind the purpose of the extract as a whole, to teach the learners and to show them how to use the dictionary, we can see that all these tasks have something in common, and they teach in one way or another, and this is actually the purpose. So in activity 1 we can see that there is the reference to the dictionary section, and there, you remember, we had some words from the real dictionary with the examples, and we saw there a noun, a verb, an adjective and plural. So this sort of guided discovery, and it helps the learners to notice these parts of speech in the dictionary and what they stand for. So that's something what might be really great to connect. And then in number 2 we can see different words, and as you know, the dictionaries may depict the word, and you can see some visuals of the items that are described. And then we have number 3. Here we deal with the words that have different meanings but are spelled in the same way, and we can see that it draws the students' attention to how to use the dictionary in such a way that students can notice different meanings and different ways how one word can be used. In B4 we can see working with pronunciation, and it's also a part of our overall goal to show the learners how to utilize the dictionary. Number 5, here we can see that it's something what asks to find the pronunciation of these words in the dictionary. So again, working with the dictionary, and in this particular case we ask the students to be more independent, and we see how they can do it. And then finally, in activity 6, you expose students to the pronunciation, and that's something what is possible these days with both online and offline dictionaries. I think that you're interested in the purpose of each task and how it relates to the overall extract purpose. So let's have a look. The intended purpose of exercise 1 is to raise awareness of grammar information in dictionaries, to help learners understand, review abbreviations in dictionaries, to check understanding of meta language, and You can see here 3 purposes that I've mentioned, but it doesn't mean that you need to mention all 3. When you need to comment on 4 activities, it was my case in the exam, then you can see that you need to comment on 2 activities more than with 1 purpose. However, here we can see 6, and it means that you need to comment, if you comment on each exercise's purpose, you can see clearly that you will have all 6 which you need to mention in your answer. Not more than 6, but preferably not less. Alright, so let's have a look at the intended purpose of exercise A2. The purpose of this exercise is to pre-teach Czech vocabulary for exercise 3, to raise awareness of words that have the same spelling but different meaning, homonyms, and to highlight different parts of speech of some homonyms. And it may happen that in the exam you can forget what homonym stands for. Don't worry, that's totally fine. So here you can see you explained what you mean. And to raise awareness of words that have the same spelling but different meaning is more than enough. It's totally fine. As for exercise A3, the purpose of this activity is to check understanding of both meaning of the homonyms, and we saw that we had to check both meanings of the homonyms, and we could see it in the context of the exercise. Another purpose is to contextualize the homonyms, and another aim is to highlight form part of speech. And now let's have a look at B4. You can see that B4 has a lot of different purposes, the variety, and you can pick one or another, whichever you like. Let's have a look. All right, B4. It's over here, pronunciation in the dictionary. Students are expected to match these words and their pronunciation. Good. So then they check it with the dictionary. The purpose of B4 is to raise awareness of pronunciation information in dictionaries, to focus on words with the same pronunciation but different spelling, homophones. Another purpose is to help learners with phonemic script, vowels and diphthongs. As for B5, let's have a look at B5 over here. Alright, find the pronunciation of these words in the dictionary. Try to say the words. We can see that this activity has the purpose to practice using a dictionary for pronunciation information. Another purpose is to check or extend to different phonemes and to focus on sound, spelling, relationship, and silent letters. If we come back, we can see there are a lot of silent letters like B, P. And as for B6, we can see that the intended purpose of activity B6 is to help learners correlate sounds to their pronunciation. In other words, we can say to reinforce the phonemic script and to give learners a good pronunciation model, because they will listen to the words, how they are pronounced. We model how they should be pronounced, which is really good for the learners. Another purpose is to provide learner-centered correction. It helps our learners become more independent users of the language, and in this particular context, users of dictionaries. And here we go. We can see that we smoothly came to part B. In this part, you're expected to comment on 6 ways in which the exercises listed in the box below combine with exercises discussed in A. Well, in this case, we can see that we have 4 tasks. How to talk about vocabulary. So we have C7, C9, D10 and D11. It's better to highlight them, and here we go. You can see that I highlighted the activities that we'll need to use with different color. And you can see here I highlighted 7C, 9C, 10D and 11D. So let me remind you, it was 1A, 2A and 3A, as well as B, B4, B5 and B6. So that's actually something what we'll work with, and we need to find the connection, we need to find how they are combined. Let's have a look at possible combinations and how you might answer in the exam. So let's have a look. In C7, we need to read the definitions and respond. Look at the definitions, opposite, work with partner and read the quiz and decide which definition A, B or C is wrong. So let's comment on how this exercise combines with exercise in task 2. First of all, C7 reviews or summarizes meanings of homonyms for previous exercises. It moves focus onto definitions information in monolingual L2 dictionary. It exposes students to key dictionary definition lexes, for example, the opposite of. It provides an opportunity for collaborative work after a stretch of individual work. C7 allows the teacher to check understanding or progress with homonyms. C7 also provides a fun activity after analytical work. If you can name the activity, that would be great. You can mention previous exercises. The more specific you are, the better. Let's have a look at C9. All right, here we go. Make definitions from the table. The example is given as well. C9 extends dictionary definitions, language to other familiar words. Focuses on dictionary definitions. And these definitions were in activity A1, A2. That's something what students will have. D10. And let's see what we have in D10. Okay, in D10 we have different parts of speech on the left-hand side. Then we have a short form explanation and the example. D10 returns focus to meta-language grammar information. It checks abbreviation introduced in A1 and it extends abbreviations from A1. You see, we mentioned here A1 and definitely it's better for our answer when you have exact reference to the exercise, and in this case we refer to A1. In these options in C7 and C9, if you can combine them with some particular tasks, it would be also great. In C7 we can see reference to previous exercises in general. But in C9 you can see that probably it might be a good idea to refer to some definitions and where they were taken from exactly. So let's say it might be A1 again. All right, let's go to D11 and let's see what we are given here. In D11, complete the story with these words. We can see some words, and if we have a look at the task itself, we have gap fill, and we can see that we are provided with the contracted form of parts of speech, so the student will understand what to use, and there is some kind of reference to activity 1 again. So D11 gives practice in applying dictionary skills focused on in earlier exercises. D11 further checks learners' understanding of abbreviations, further checks learners' understanding, meaning that before we were also checking this understanding of abbreviations. And let's have a look where else we had it. So we had it in activity 1A. D11 also allows the teacher to check understanding or progress with meta-language. And here we go, we are done with part B, and now we can go smoothly to part C. In part C, you're asked to identify a total of 6 key assumptions about language learning that are evident in the exercise listed in the box below. We can see the reference to A1, A3, B4 and B5, and we need to explain why these assumptions might be considered to be important for language learning. We need to state which exercise or exercises each assumption refers to. Again, we have a different color, and you can see that I highlighted the activities we need to refer to. 1, 3, 4, 5. These are the ones that we need to keep in mind while providing our answers. First of all, it's really important to understand how to shape your answer. There are some things, some kind of frames that can make your life easier and that can help you answer it in a more specific and concise way. What I'm trying to say is, you have here the beginning. It is useful to give learners explicit training in something. And then you have because. So first you mention it is useful, or it is helpful, or it is vital, or it is important to do something, and you mention what exactly. And then you mention why. If you have noticed, you have some reference to the activities, and here you go, you have the reference to exercise A1, B4 and B5. Here it's possible that you will refer to more than one activity, and feel free to do so. As you can see what I've just mentioned, you can see the beginning, which will be assumption. So it is useful, it is valuable for the learners to learn meta language. It is useful to study homonyms and homophones. It is useful to study words with multiple meanings in English and focus on sound spelling. You can shape it in a very nice way using these beginnings. And don't forget about because. You can see that because is really important everywhere. And reference to exercises. It's something what you're expected to do. So let's briefly see what we have here. All right. It is useful to give learners explicit training in using dictionaries because it helps learners continue learning outside the classroom. That's actually something what can be considered a good answer. And here you have the exercises A1, B4, B5. You will just have a chance to stop this video and have a look at all possible options, assumptions and reasons that you can talk about, and it will probably inspire you in your answers. Don't forget, you need to come up with just 6 assumptions. So here you can see more than 6. I especially mentioned here more so that you can have different examples. You can read them when you have more time. You can stop this video and you can have a look, maybe take some notes of those that you find really helpful and that are quite insightful. And I think that it might help you in the future, in the long run. All right, so how to prepare? First of all, you need to read references on historical and current hypotheses of first and second language acquisition. That's something what I've just mentioned. And you need to read references on historical and current mainstream approaches and methods in language teaching, grammar translation, direct method, audiolingualism, behaviorism, and structural linguistics. So that's something what will definitely help you not only in this task, but also in other upcoming tasks. 3, and you can see that it can be really useful. You need to read and analyze a variety of published ELT coursebook materials for approaches to and assumptions about language learning and teaching, asking some simple questions that you will see in the next slide, which are: what is the purpose of the task, activity or procedure? It's really helpful because it raises your awareness of why to give this task actually. What theories have influenced its design and what assumptions underlie those theories? You need to plan lessons using published coursebook materials, assigning an aim, an objective to each stage of the lesson. In other words, you need to think why to give this task or another. Think carefully, not just because it is in your coursebook, but because you understand that your students need it, because you understand that it is important to expose them to this particular task, because they can master some skills or they can raise their awareness of something. And when you become more aware of why you give one task or another, you can see that the quality of your lessons becomes higher, your students become more engaged, and they can see that you're interested in giving them relevant tasks and you understand why you give this task, because many times it happens that you need to skip some tasks or even some pages, and it's totally okay. You don't need to feel guilty when you work with your students because you know them better and you know how to divide your time, how to spend your time in the classroom, because it's all about decision-making process. But that's a different topic. All right, how else you can prepare? You need to observe learners while they engage in exercises and stage of a lesson to make sure if the aim or your objective assigned to it was accurate. Consult other teachers when preparing for the lessons in order to gain greater input on the intended purpose and assumptions informing individual exercises, activities and stages. Working with peers, working with other teachers is really very helpful. And when we were preparing for Delta, I remember that we were gathering together and we were discussing different assumptions and reasons why to give this or that task. We were taking some pages, random pages from different course books, and we were trying to analyze why some tasks are provided there, not others, why some tasks are recommended and why they decided to put them, what's the objective, and we were thinking how the students might benefit from those tasks. It helped us to understand the methodology behind it. What to start with? When you come to the exam, you need to read the rubric carefully and take full note of which exercises should be discussed for each part of the task. And you remember highlighting is definitely helpful because it helps you focus on the tasks you need to focus on. Then note that in part A, you should discuss the purposes of the exercise in relation to the purpose of the extract as the whole. That's really important. Write more than one purpose for each exercise. It's totally fine. Only write about 6 purposes in part A. So, and preferably make sure that you refer to each exercise which was mentioned. For part B, make sure you discuss how specific exercises combine with or support the exercises in part A. Note that there may be several ways in which each exercise can combine, so you should try to identify more than one way if you have enough time. And only write about 6 ways that exercises combine in part B. Even if you can come up with more, don't waste your time, because the examiners and actually the markers will not have enough time to read, and also they actually are not expected to read more than 6. In part C, you need to identify 6 key assumptions about language learning evident in specified exercises and reasons for these assumptions. You need to come up with assumptions and the reason. Probably you remember we were talking about the beginning, the structure that might be really helpful when you shape your answer. The beginning, like it is important to do something, it is vital to do something, it is essential to do something, and then mentioning the reason, because, and then you talk about that. Don't forget to mention the reference to the task or tasks. With the help of this, you can gain more marks. Only write about 6 assumptions in part C, so again, don't waste your time. Don't write 7 or 8, no one will read it. Avoid describing the activities and instead consider the assumptions behind them. So that's also kind of a trap, right? You can see that you describe an activity instead of providing some particular assumption. Think about the assumption itself and think about the reasons. Ensure that you explain why the authors might consider the assumption important for learning and or skills development. Make reference to ELT-related research where necessary. Make sure you indicate which exercises the assumptions you mentioned refer to. That's important, and that's something what will make your answer more specific. Be aware of the following. You need to read the rubric carefully. I mentioned it 100 times, I know that, but that's really important because you will sometimes be directed to areas of the material to ignore or which are not relevant. And that's actually something what you need to be really very careful with. My advice would be the question carries 42% of the possible marks, so you need to spend about 35 minutes on it, but less if you can. In my case, I spent even more, so I spent about 40 minutes, and probably because I got easily distracted, but that was my personal case, and I'm pretty sure that in your case, if you are well focused, you can spend less time. Marking. Well, that's a very interesting thing, isn't it? So here you go. You have 2 marks for each purpose you identify, up to the maximum of 12 marks. So stop at 6 ideas. And that's something what you will have. Not more than 6 ideas should be mentioned. 2 marks each for stating the way the exercises combine. It's about part B. Up to a maximum of 12 again, so you need to stop at 6 ideas. 1 mark for each assumption you identify. There are 6 assumptions, so the max of 6. 1 mark for each explanation of the assumption, up to 6 marks. 1 mark for each relevant exercise you refer to. So you can see that if you mention the assumption, if you mention the reason, and if you mention the reference to the exercise, here you go, you can get 18 marks, and that's a lot actually. Note that only the first 6 assumptions you identify will be marked, so stop at 6. That's also important. No matter what idea you come up with further, it's better if you stop. If you see that one idea is better, so of course you can cross it, and that's something what might be possible. Keep it tidy. And remember, you can't know everything, but you can increase the probability of doing better in the exam by doing past papers, noticing your gap, and analyzing the guidelines to better meet the requirements. All right, I think that was everything what I wanted to share with you in this session. It's a relatively long one, but hopefully you will find it helpful. And all the materials that I used today were taken from official resources, from Cambridge Assessment, and we'll share the link down below so that you can also have a look at it. And I wish you good luck, and I hope that you will have a chance to perform well in the exam. If you have any questions, please share them in the comments down below. See you in my upcoming video about Module 1, Paper 2, Task 3. Bye!